Alright, so the little Frontier came back in the garage, and I got in it the other day, and the brake light's on the dash. So that means that the brake fluid in the reservoir has gotten so low because the pads have gotten so worn that it turned the light on. So we got to get some brakes done. This one doesn't come in the shop very often. One of the most reliable little trucks I've had. I got another little Nissan. This is an 84 720. And that's probably the most reliable one. I mean, the thing's ancient, 200 and no telling how many thousand miles. Little fella's still running. But he's not as reliable as this Frontier when it comes to day-to-day, just because he's so old. So let's get set up and I'll show you the little brake light and then show you what's going on with why that little light came on. And then we'll do a brake job real quick and get everything squared away. Alright, so we're looking down in the engine compartment, and right here is the brake fluid reservoir. So the light on the dash lights up because this guy's little float gets too low. So when you're doing a brake job on it, when you put your new pads on, if you'll fill it up to the max and put it right on the max, as the brake pads wear, the fluid drops because the piston's pushing further. And so it'll turn that light on before you run out of brakes, and then that'll let you know that you are dangerously close to not having any brakes. Right inside of here, underneath this little screen, is a little float. And so I can touch it with my finger, and what it does is float up and down with the fluid level. So you can see the fluid level has gotten pretty low, and so it's turned that on. That turns the light on the dash. So if you're wondering why that little light lit up, it lights up because the fluid gets too low. So assuming you don't have any leaks, then most likely it's that your pads have worn enough that your fluid has gotten low. So let's go back over to the cab and I'll show you the little brake light being on, and then what I'm going to do is take a little piece of metal and just pick up on the float, and you'll see the light turn on and off, and you'll know that's where that little light comes from. Alright, so here we are looking in the cab, and I got the ignition on so you can see the little red brake light. So this is the light I'm talking about. So when I start it, that little brake light ought to go off, but it didn't go off. So what I got to do is get the fluid level back up to make that float turn off, but I can do it by hand just to show you. So all I'm going to do is take the little cap off and pull the screen out, and then you can see when I raise up on the float, you'll see that light turn off and on. And you see the light goes off. If I push down on it, then the light will come back on. So that's where that little light comes from, in case you were ever wondering. Alright, so what we need to do is change out some brake pads, and then as we compress the pistons back in with a C-clamp, then what's going to happen is this fluid's going to come back up. So there's no sense in adding any fluid to it right now until we change the brakes out. If you change the brakes and you've already put fluid in there, then you're going to have to watch and make sure that you don't overflow your master cylinder because it's going to push all that fluid back. So if you look at the level right now, you can see that it's right about there, right at the line. After I do the brakes, I'll come back right at the end and show that it's actually gone back up, and it should be sitting up on max or normal or whatever's on the side of that. So let's get set up over here and do us a brake job real quick and get this thing back in shape. Alright, so to change the brakes on this little Frontier, we don't need much. We just need some sockets to get the tire off, and then some sockets to take the brake caliper off, and some wrenches, and we're going to need a C-clamp in order to push the caliper back. Of course, we need some brakes, and then maybe we're going to need a little brake fluid. But that should be all that we need. Alright, so we're all set up, and I got it on the car lift, but you don't need a car lift for this. You can just put a jack under it and raise the tire up. But before you raise the tire up, the easiest thing to do to get these bolts free is to leave some weight on the vehicle and then break the lug nuts loose. And then when you put it up on the jack, you'll be able to jack it up easy. So all we're going to do is just loosen them up enough that it doesn't spin the tire, and that's with the weight of the vehicle. on the tire. And just keep in mind, we're only loosening them. If you take them off, the whole truck will fall down because it's not on a jack. But we're just gonna loosen them up just a little bit. And I'll go do the other side real quick and then we'll lift it up. Alright, so we got both sides loosened up. They're not loose, they're just loose a little. That way when I lift it up, it won't be so hard to get the tires to not rotate. So let's raise it up. So we're down on the safety catches, so now we can take the tire off. And you can see that the rotors are still fine. Hasn't gotten down into the rotor. All we got is the little light on, and we know our pads are down to almost nothing. So let me scoot the camera in a little bit, and we'll take these brakes off real fast and change them out. Alright, so here's our brake caliper. And what we got to do is take that off and pop the pads out. So I need to get something to set it on because this line's not very long. And you don't want to put a lot of stress on it. So I'm going to get a bucket. Alright. There's us a little bucket, and what we're going to do is take it off and lay it here and do our work on it. So, in order to get them off, there should be just a couple of big old bolts back there. So we need a 22 millimeter socket, and let's put that on our breaker bar. See if we can get it moving a little bit. There we go. So whatever it takes to get them off there. Either a big cheater bar or a breaker bar. So now we get it freed up, we can get it the rest of the way with a regular wrench. Alright, so let's slide our little bucket in here. So there's the top bolt that holds the caliper on. And there's the bottom bolt with the washer. Alright, so here's where the bucket comes in. So what we want to do is take the caliper off and just lay it over so we can change the pads. So if it doesn't want to come off, you can put something right in between there and ease it off there. And there we go. There's our caliper and our pads. Alright, so we got our pads. What we got to do is change these out. And so it's real easy to figure out if you take them off one by one. So all we're going to do is replace out the pads, but before we take the old pad off the back where the pistons are, what we want to do is push the pistons back. And for some of these, this front one may be in the way. So what you can do is just take a screwdriver and pop that one loose, because we're not worried about him. And they just slide forward and then they come out. So this one on the outside is the one that doesn't have the tab. So the outside one is this one. So this one would probably have the tab. So now all we need to do is set it up, and we can take our C-clamp, and if you're very gentle, grab it right in the middle and you can just push on top of the center there. And it doesn't take a lot of pressure to do this. All you got to do is just keep everything lined up. And so you just ease it back. You go real slow. It shouldn't be much resistance at all. It should be very easy to do with just a couple fingers. If it's like crazy hard to do, then something's wrong. And there you go. So see, can't move it anymore. So I know I'm all the way back. So there we go. So we got our pistons pushed back. Everything's in good shape there. And now we can take that pad out. And so all you do is the same deal. Just rock it forward or knock it out of there. comes the one with the tab. So you can see I still had some life left on them, but it's telling me pretty early that I need some more pads, and that way it keeps everything safe. Okay, so the reinstall is just in reverse order. All we do is put the pad back in, and you can see that this is on the back side. If you put it that way, it's not going to work, right? You got to put it around to where it's round here, which means it goes in like that right there. So all we want to do is lock that one back in there, and sometimes they're a little difficult. But you just have to push it back in there until you meet up with the piston. Like that. And so it's past the caliper's wall. And we do the same thing for this one. This one's on this side, so when it comes up round, and so it goes in there like that right there. So all you do is set it back on its little tabbies and lock it back in. Sometimes it's a little complicated. It doesn't like to get over those little spring things on the ends, but you have to get it down in there in order to see it properly. And you can't beat on it, so all you can do is kind of gingerly push on the tab. You can't hit on the brake pad anywhere. Right here you could hit it. Right on that little metal corner. Don't hit on the tab right there. Alright, so everything's in place, and we're ready to flip it back on there and reinstall those two big bolts. So it's about that easy. Hardest part is just getting the two big bolts broke loose, which you can use a cheater bar or a sledgehammer or whatever you need to break those two big ones loose that hold the caliper on. So now we're pushed back, so all we do is slide it back up on there. And you can see it fits real loose right now. And we just want to line up our bolts. And away we go. And there we go. We have successfully changed out one side for our old pads to new pads. Well, we'll go up here and look and see just how much doing one side has raised the level of the brake fluid. So let's swing up here real quick. So after just doing one side, we can see that the brake fluid level was down here. Now it's up here. When I do the other side, it's going to come up even higher. So after we get the brakes done, what we'll do is check and make sure that that's at the max level, and then we should be good to go. Well, all right, let's get set up on the other side and do this other one real quick. All right, so we got everybody snugged up. Can't tighten them up fully yet because the wheel spins. So I got to lower it back down and just touch on the ground. I'm going to put some weight on it, but not the full vehicle weight. So let me get my lift up. Now, got just enough weight on it so the wheel won't spin. So now I can do my final torque. We just do that for the other side. Alright, so with the new brakes on, and I haven't pushed the caliper back in so the pads touch the rotor yet, but you can see that the level went from here all the way up to here. So it doesn't look like I need to add any brake fluid because it's all the way up at the line. But now I got to go in there and push the pedal down, and you'll see that drop just a little bit, and then maybe we'll have to top it off. So I'll go in here and push the pedal, and then we'll check the level. And there we go. So now our new pads are touching down on the rotor, and you could probably see that the level dropped a little bit. So now I just got to get a light and see what I got for the level. So I'm a little bit below max, so max is right here. I'm right there. So what I can do is just top it off just a little bit and get it up to max, and then that way, as my brakes wear again, it'll turn that little light on for me now that I got new brakes. So let me just put a little fluid in there. And there we go. So we're all finished up. New pads, everything's pushed in right, and we got our level set. So we're ready for another set of brakes to come on after another whatever thousands of miles, and we'll do it all over again. Well, alrighty. Thanks for watching.